Have you ever sat on your bathroom floor crying because not only did you feel so overwhelmed, you felt so alone in trying to navigate the challenges of a neurodiverse husband and kids who you love them both, but it is so hard doing that on your own. I understand. I have been there, and today I'm sharing with you 3 different ways I have combat this loneliness.
Hey friend, do the daily demands of family life leave you exhausted with no time for yourself? Ready to make self-care and healthy boundaries a natural part of your day, all while embracing your roles as a wife and mom? Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Christina, married 16 years to a neurodiverse man, mom of 3 neurodiverse kids, and many more roles. Welcome to the Moms in Neurodiverse Families podcast. Get ready to begin your self-care journey. Grab your Santé latte and listen in as we take a small step towards a healthier you.
When you hear the words mom nights out, do you think of yourself? Think about what you would do on your night out? Or do you hear that phrase and your first thought is, that'd be nice. That's never going to happen. I remember when the kids were really young. In fact, only had the first 2 older ones. And I longingly looked at all these other moms getting together, and they were having meals after Bible study, or they were getting together, their families were getting together after church, and they were having community. And I'll be honest, there's a little bit of jealousy, but more so just sadness. I couldn't be part of those groups. One, if I could even get everyone to come to one of those events, I'd be spending my whole time working with the kids to deal with the stimulus or to deal with their excitement, and I would have very little time to engage. Also, it was the concern of how these other women would understand my children. I love my children so much, and I can understand the differences between selfishness and a meltdown versus overstimulation. I can see those nuances, but most people, they weren't able to understand that. All they saw was a child having a temper tantrum because they didn't get their way. Not there was so many people and in an environment, and my kids felt overcrowded, and then a dog came into the room and began barking, and they felt scared. So having community was something I desperately wanted, but yet the family dynamics made it so difficult. Doing Bible studies, it was difficult going as a whole family because of my husband and his challenges and finding people he could connect with, but also people that I would want to connect with was very tricky. But also, again, who was going to watch the kids? And if we did bring the kids along, oftentimes their challenges took me away multiple times to go down to the area and to work with the kids and figure out why are we having another meltdown. It became such a stressful situation for us. And I struggled with this question for many, many years. I so badly wanted friends, community, a support system, but how can I do that when the family that I know God's called me to is actually at that moment a factor that prevents me from seeking that out? And today I want to chat with you on what I found was my way of having that need of not feeling alone anymore. And bit by bit, my community has grown over time. And now I have a vibrant group of friends and connections I have both in person and also virtually. Now, we're going through a planning series talking about the different life needs that we need as moms and wives in neurodiverse families. And one of them that I believe is very critical is being in community. Community is the first part of a greater need, which is connection. We desperately want connection with our family, with the world around us, with the community. And when we do not have that, it impacts our mind, it impacts our mental health, our physical health. When I'm referring to community, I'm talking about three key components. First are friends. When I say friends, I mean other women who are committed to your best and will not be on repeat of all the hardships you're going through, but instead, they will have a balanced point of view. They will care for your family, even though they know the hardships that you're going through. They will care for you and they will encourage you to keep being the best person you can be. That is the kind of friend that you need. People who are wanting to listen to your hardships and then mull it over and talk it over and keep bringing it up over and over again, those are the people you do not need at all. Those are the type of people who will bring you down. So, friends, that's the first part that's very important. Second part of community is a support system. Support system usually refers to people, but also it can be routines and systems you have within the home. But people wise, support systems can be that one neighbor that you trust who could take the kids to school when you are really sick. Also, it is someone who is willing to support you in other ways, whether it's through prayer, whether it's bringing a meal, or often what's helped me is willing to work on projects that are beyond my either capacity or my skill around the home. Often in neurodiverse families, doing house projects can be a challenge for many reasons. For some, it's because of balancing the children's needs and doing a project is too much. The construction sounds and trying to be present and handle the kids' sensory overload and then also working on the project can be a lot. I've heard other women share that their spouse struggles with some of the executive functioning and being able to carry out a project and find a way to have it resolved in a short amount of time, especially if you're doing something such as windows or working on a roof. And having people who are able to help you with some of those tasks is incredibly important. Your go-to person when, if your spouse is traveling, you know who you can ask for help if someone broke a window or if you have a problem with your car. So support system is more than a listening ear. And also it can be as you need it, or it could be in a weekly basis. Having coffee there with someone and to chat about the overwhelmed and frustrations that you're dealing with. And maybe it's for a season, but having a support system is so important. And in future episodes, we're going to talk about routines and systems that can help support the work that we're doing in the family. But right now, I'm just focusing on the people portion. And the last part is support groups. Now, this is different. This is usually led by someone who has experience and training in working with women who are in neurodiverse families. Their husband and their kids are neurodiverse. Oftentimes, seeking support groups or counseling from general Christian resources or from a general counselor can have very negative impact. I know myself, my spouse and I have sought input from lay ministers, those who were mentors to other men or women, looking for direction for marriage counseling advice. And they meant well, but the advice ended up creating greater problems and deep hurt for us. So finding someone who is able to give support, a listening ear, and also direction, and what I believe being Christian based is incredibly important. In those support groups, I have found there's other women who, as I am sharing my story, are nodding their heads yes. And this is almost always on a Zoom call because of the challenges of meeting in person and also the challenges of having enough people in a local area. But during these Zoom calls with the support group, having other women who've had such similar experiences, and some will be farther ahead of you and they will share these golden nuggets of wisdom, and it will be so encouraging to you. And others will share how they processed and healed from some of the difficulties, and others are not where you're at, and they will be encouraged by what that you ask the question and how you are moving forward with some of the challenges you have in your marriage and with your family. So having a support group is critical. And one of the things that I'm going to be working on the future offering is self-care coaching for women who are wanting some one-on-one accountability and walking through the steps of how do I carry out self-care in my life. And the reason why this is so tricky is the demands of caring for a neurodiverse family, for a husband and for kids can be so loud and constant that it's so easy to ignore the quiet sounds of our needs being unmet. But when you have someone else walking alongside you and asking questions on a weekly basis, if, hey, you wanted to work on this goal of having quiet time to yourself 5 minutes every day, and you know that person's going to ask you that question, that gives you the fortitude to find that time. And when you begin finding success and enjoyment from taking that quiet time, you want to keep moving on. And that is my heart, is helping women to slowly increase capacity and resilience so that they take care of themselves and take care of their family. So why is this important? Why is it important for us to be connected, to have community? I have a couple of quotes that I want to share with you from Dr. Jim Wilder in his book, The Other Half of Church, which is a beautiful compilation of neuroscience, theology, and faith. And here's the first quote, and this is so important. Okay, please listen to this carefully. Joy is primarily transmitted through the face, especially the eyes, and secondarily through the voice. Joy is relational. It is what we feel when we are with someone who is happy to be with us. Joy does not exist outside of a relationship, and joy is important to God and to us. What this is saying here, Dr. Jim Wilder is alluding to, is joy is connected to people, to relationships, also to God, and it could even be with pets. That people part is difficult. So I'll read this over again. Joy is primarily transmitted through the face, especially the eyes. And that is very difficult in neurodiverse families because eye-to-eye contact with your spouse or with your kids may be very limited depending upon their capacity and their challenges. And the other part was through voice. If your child is nonverbal or at times nonverbal, you still have that connection, but you are feeling sometimes, oh, I wish I could communicate them. Or when your spouse is nonverbal, either they're overwhelmed or through intentional choice, and you do not have that communication, that excitement that he sees you and he's excited to be with you. When you don't have that, that impacts you and how you feel that lack of joy. When we are in a neurodiverse family, and if we are already in a situation when we're not getting that eye-to-eye contact or that I'm happy to see you, in fact, if you go away for maybe a day or so or for a couple hours and going back to the family, some women have expressed feeling extreme anxiety because they know they're going back to a situation where there isn't joy. Instead, there is fix my problems, I need help, and meltdowns. And I'm not saying that in those moments, that person and those kids are not having challenges and they need help. What I'm saying is the capacity to help and be relational is dependent upon having that feedback that someone is excited to be with you and that they're glad to be with you. And if you're not receiving that for whatever reason, that makes this so challenging. And this is why community is so important. Because if we are not receiving it from our family or not receiving it on an ongoing basis, it's at moments, then we need to find a different place within respect to our marriage vows. Find a way that we are still feeling connected in a community. I have another quote from the same book of Dr. Jim Wilder, The Other Half of Church. The quote is, Another culprit that leaks joy is unresolved trauma. From the brain's perspective, trauma happens anytime we suffer alone. Suffering turns into trauma when we are unable to process our suffering with God and other people. Trauma is stored in our brain, in circuits of flesh, kind of like an armed mousetrap. Oh my goodness, this is so pivotal, friends, so pivotal. So when we are going through these hard moments with our family, and sometimes it can be traumatic. If your child is having such an extreme sensory reaction and they're flailing their arms and they hit you, they did not intend to hurt you. They love you. They give you the best snuggles and hugs and kisses, but in that moment, they did something that did harm you. And even though the intention wasn't to be harmful, there still was harm. And same thing can apply to the spouse. If your spouse is reacting in a way and is saying statements that are hurtful and harmful, their intent wasn't to hurt you. They were extremely overwhelmed and frustrated. However, there was still the impact of hurt. And when we feel that we are alone, and I mentioned before at the start of the podcast about how I didn't feel how I could connect with other women because my life was so just different and challenging, that makes the suffering so much worse. So one of the answers to dealing with trauma, and I would guess that you even had trauma from your childhood, whether it was from school or your family of origin, wherever it happened, that trauma in our childhood can also make it difficult for us to process all that has happened in our neurodiverse family. And again, please hear me. I understand that our neurodiverse loved ones, some of their actions are doing does not have the intent, but it still has the impact. We cannot ignore the impact to us. So by being in community, it can help us develop joy and make us feel like we are not alone anymore. And this is why I am so passionate about community as being one of the 4 parts of our life needs. And here's one more quote from Dr. Jim Wilder. Joy helps us regulate our emotions and endure suffering. Jesus refused to relinquish joy in the midst of his suffering on the cross. When we are able to stay relationally connected to others and God, we experience joy while we suffer. Joy does not remove our pain, but it gives us the strength to endure. Remember that joy is relational. So, quote unquote, joy in suffering means that God and our community are glad to be with us in our distress. They do not allow us to suffer alone. We are able to bear our suffering like Jesus, quote, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, unquote. And that's Hebrews 12, verse 2. And that really is a pivotal statement, that when we are going through suffering, to have someone else next to us, silently crying and giving us a hug, just being present, that I am with you in this, is powerful. A person listening to your story and just nodding and having empathetic look in their eyes, that is powerful and that can be healing. I hope that you're getting like the insight for how community leads to connection, which helps us to be the best person we can be. And again, this is not about selfishness. This self-care, or what I love to call life needs, is so that we take care of ourselves so you can help and care for your family. Let me leave you a couple of quick tips of how you could start developing community in your life. Okay, first idea, and I'm going back when I remember things were just crazy. If I knew I just needed to be with another person, maybe I couldn't share with them all the challenges that I had, but I just wanted to see someone face to face, have adult conversations. Then I would invite someone over to my home for coffee or tea, and I would explain like, hey, my kids sometimes, they just have some sensory challenges. They may get super excited when they see you, or they may really enjoy a toy. They're still figuring out things about life, so they might have some reactions that are a little bit bigger. And by giving that little intro, it really helped if they did have some reaction. And I'm guessing you can tell too if a person's kind of about like laid back and they know that, well, kids, don't expect them to be adults. There are some people out there who do have a problem with kids who act like kids, and those are probably not the people you want to be bringing in your home. But that's my first suggestion, is have meet up at your home. Or if there's a place you know your kids are super chill and content, then meet in that location. And there's actually churches that are beginning to have play areas for moms to come and hang out. That would be a great place, or at a mall. But think about what is a place you can meet. And again, maybe this is not a friend where you're able to share, like, hey, this is a challenge I have going on, but it is still someone you're connecting with. And it may turn into that. Okay, support system. This can be looking for one person to help you with an activity, a backup. So I'm going to use you are sick and the kids have to get to school. One of the support systems may be the bus, which we did use for a short time, only because we were so close to the school. That worked out well. But for you might say, my child cannot go on the bus. And I understand 100%. We waited for them to go on the bus because of the challenges of understanding, where do I sit? How do I act in the bus? Why is it not appropriate for me to stand up in the bus and open up windows in the wintertime? So there's a lot there. So the bus may not be an option, but is there someone that you can develop a relationship with who can just take the kids to school when you are really, really ill? And it may be first that you're having them coming over for coffee or tea, and your kids are getting used to being around them. They see them, and maybe even taking a car ride with them. Again, having your kids becoming acclimated with people is one of the key successes of having someone else helping you out. Or it could be a woman who has all her kids are out of the home and she loves to cook. Like, like when she's making food for a potluck, everyone's like, oh my gosh, what is Laura making? Because it's going to be so yummy. And if she is someone who's open to it, ask her like, hey, when I'm really sick, like, can I give you 2 or 3 meals that I know my kids will eat? Like, I can just ask you to make when I'm really sick and I just can't do it. That is another way of developing a support system. So again, just small ways we begin looking at how can we have something to go to, a person to go to fill that need. Okay, last thing, support groups. I'm going to list down in the show notes where you can find support groups. And this is my one caveat. There are support groups out there for wives and for moms of neurodiverse kids, autism, ADHD, dyspraxia. But this is my warning, is a protection for you. Some of them will focus so much on the negativity and how hopeless and how this is so hard, and will be slamming their husbands and their kids. That will not give you life. That will help you only see hopelessness, and it will continue to grow bitterness in your heart. Those are not the support groups I'm talking about. I'm talking about groups where they will say, this is hard what you're dealing with. This is so challenging. And we're going to find ways to help you think through these challenges, and also encourage you to look at yourself and say, my attitude right now is not helping the situation. This is something I need to refresh. That is what we need in a support group. It is so easy to complain. I'm not saying that it's not appropriate to process, but the goal of processing emotions is so that they are out of our system and that we understand it better. Regurgitating does not help. Venting so that we feel worse at the end than we did before does not help. Finding a right support group can be life-giving. And that is the goal here, is small different steps that we can do. And not that you can do all those things I just mentioned at once. But here are my last thoughts. What it would be like for you if you began implementing just one of the things I mentioned, or your own idea that came to your head as we were talking here, or as you're listening to me and I'm talking. I hope it feels like we're having a back and forth chat. That is my goal. I know when I go back in time, and it was literally like a brick. I felt like each week I just put one brick on that wall, and I put some mortar there. And then the next week I put another brick on. I felt like I was having such slow progress. In fact, tears come to my eyes thinking back about how hard it was. A upward crawl, an army crawl uphill, it felt like. But when I began implementing just a small thing every week, it built upon each other. My growth was not like the other women I knew, where they said, goals and plans and what things they could accomplish, it wasn't the same. The rewards that you and I receive for when we have that small growth, for when our child is able to, for the first time, catch themselves and begin regulating themselves, when they begin feeling a meltdown coming on, the moment when you can sense that circular conversation is about to spiral out of control between you and your spouse, and the both of you find a way to stop it, and instead you have a good conversation that has a great resolution. When you get that, that is a gold medal, because other people do not have to work so hard to get to that point. We are army crawling our way. The speed does not matter though, because staying where we are at doesn't hold any life or joy for us. But all that small progress, I promise you, it will add up. It has for me. And that is my passion and joy, is to help other women to see that small glimmer of that hope, and to slowly, one by one, put one more brick on that wall until eventually there is resilience and there is capacity that wasn't there before. I love to hear from you. Let me know if this episode gave you some insight, or if there was an aha moment that you had, or even your own answers you found, because I do not have all the answers. I love community because I learn from other women all the time. As soon as we become prideful and think I know it all, then I'm toast. You and I are toast. So that is a great thing. So please share with me if there are some things that you found that works for you.
Hey, thank you for joining me today. I pray this episode gave you encouragement to take one small step. If so, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help other women find this show. By the way, if you're loving this conversation and want more encouragement like this, join my email list at bit.ly/myselfcare. That is bit.ly/myselfcare. I have a planner launching soon that will help you put all this into action in your own life. I look forward to chatting with you again next week for another episode.